Hey nerds! In this live stream, we will review and do a spoiler breakdown of Loki Season 2, Episode 5, the titled Science Slash Fiction. It is written by Eric Martin and directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I am Colin.
And I'm Nathan.
So, we have reached the penultimate episode of Loki Season 2, and spoiler-free logline for this is Loki traverses dying timelines in an attempt to find his friends, but reality is not what it seems. So, Nathan, what do you think of this episode here, the penultimate one? So we left with a big cliffhanger at the end of episode 4. Now we kind of try to navigate through the ramifications of that cliffhanger. So, what were your thoughts about this episode?
This is a pretty good episode. This is awesome. Actually, it was a very emotional episode. Yeah, it's hard to talk about this given how the last episode ended without like spoiling things. But I will say that um, I guess you kind of have to spoil a little bit to say that the performances are great. Seeing as how at the end of the episode, the last episode, it seemed like everyone's going to die. So.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that did not happen exactly, but I can't really say why it didn't happen. Everyone didn't die, but anyway, the performances are great. The actors in the show are doing really great work. It's really
Mm-hmm.
all I can say. Um, I can't really say what they were doing or what situations are they're in or what
Mm-hmm.
or how they survived or if they all survived because like I said, last episode was like they were all looking at a giant explosion coming towards them. But on many levels, it was a really emotional episode, and it's a really big highlight for Tom Hiddleston because he's the center of the show, but he's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily the center of every plot point in every episode. But I think he was sort of the center of almost every plot point in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really good episode. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that definitely less on action in this episode, but more on the emotional beats. Yeah, I think once
Hmm.
you kind of said that, I was like, yeah, looking back on it, I'm like replaying it in my mind. I'm like, wow, this is really emotional. There's some really good acting as well as some good beats in terms of the interactions between the characters and stuff, and leaving it from the standpoint of, like I said, the cliffhanger at the end with the close up of him with the eyes, and it was very interesting in terms of the visuals of all of it. In this one, definitely a lot of stunning visuals in this one as well. So I think, yeah, I just think that I am still very. The last 3 episodes, I mean, this one, including episode 4 and episode 3, really have kind of cemented the fact that Loki is definitely the best Marvel show out there. I think that people can argue about WandaVision as well, but I mean, Loki has just been it's on another level, and I think that they really kind of poured in a lot of the efforts, and there's and we've had a lot of misgivings about Marvel and their writing this year, and so seeing this really kind of helps in terms of looking at it from the standpoint of, oh well, this not is not as bad as we thought, and hopefully looking back on it, we can say that Phase 4/Phase 5 has not been that bad, but it's kind of hard when you are kind of living in the moment, and it's just very difficult in terms of kind of judging things, so immediately right after it comes out. So I think that a lot of that came from just the early reviews. When people started seeing the first 4 episodes, they were like, I don't really think it's good as season 1. But it's like, well, I didn't see that big of a deal about it. Yes, there were some slow points, but I didn't see that much of a drop off. But it's from what I saw, I was like, oh,
Hmm.
there's a huge drop off. I'm like, no, not really. So that's kind of how my thinking is of the episode, of it. So in terms of rating, what do you think? What do you think of the rating that you're gonna give it?
Well, I'm trying to be a little bit conservative, but I really like this episode. It was really, like I said, emotional, and you got to see some really cool things in this episode. And there's definite indication of where they're going to end with the final episode. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 9. I'm reserving judgment for episode number 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that for me, I gave tens for the last 2 episodes, but I think this one I'm gonna knock it down just a little bit, for a 9, because I think that there are definitely some things. There was definitely one thing that was there that's kind of a familiar beat to it. It'll be mentioned in the title of this live stream. So so I think that because of that, I think it's kind of like we'll just kind of give it a 9 for now, and then see, yeah, like you said. See what will happen in terms of the episode, the next episode, and look at what happens. So we'll just kind of go take it from there. But anyways, if you like what you see so far, please like, share, and subscribe to more content like this. So we just want to actually, we're just trying to make sure that that the algorithm kind of is happy for us, and make sure that everything is cool with that. And any other final thoughts before we start, Nathan? Sorry about that. It's a little bit technical difficulty there. Go ahead. Any other thoughts, Nathan?
No.
Okay.
No. I think it's impossible to really talk about this without without spoiling it. So let's get into it.
All right, let's go. Let's get into it. Spoilers ahead, people. Okay, so we're gonna go to this scene. This is like kind of how this penultimate episode started with the kind of like the timelines getting collapsed, and it's just very interesting visual. I mean, we saw this in the previous episode with Victor Timely, like getting spaghettified, and so here it's like this whole effect of getting spaghettified, and then the ominous like screen of them saying thank you for your service with Miss Minister. I'm just like, this is just like really, really top-notch visual stuff, and we've kind of like really panned them for like bad CGI or bad things going on, and this is just like, wow.
Yeah, I think it depends on the team, and there's been a lot of articles about this over the last year about how they push the graphics houses. I think if they have enough time, they can do really great work. I mean, I think they were probably pushed too hard on things like Quantumania, and they had to probably juggle things like Wakanda Forever at the same time. So, but if they have time, they can do really great stuff. This thing looks so weird and eerie, and what it really reminded me of is Cordyceps from The Last of Us. That weird like mushroom, almost like organic, and kind of it made my skin crawl a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we'll see another one of this later on. But then this is just like how you start off this episode is just like, wow, this is happening right now, and then him also going back in the time slipping as well, like because the fail-safe mode is on now for the TVA, so he's like doing all the time slipping thing, and again, it kind of reminded me, I think going back to the first episode, it reminded me of Moon Knight, where it's like, him going through the seizures and stuff. So it's like kind of like that seizure type of effect that's going on. And it's just like, wow, just amazing. And going back to what you said about the special effects, I mean, yes, they've been pushed really hard, and I think that's why Disney's trying to really kind of, kind of fall back a little bit and try to, quality over quantity, that type of thing. And hopefully because of that, and also with the resolution of the strikes, we can kind of get back to kind of like more quality Marvel TV in the future. Yeah. So let's keep going. So you can see here. So at first you saw that Loki was kind of going into this room. He was in the back, and then he doesn't know who that was, and he was like saying hello, and then he time slipped. And then he was able to kind of get in.
He became that person. Yeah,
he became that person. It's like, whoa, this kind of like mind trip right there. And then he's able to do that. And again, very interesting kind of effect that's happening here with playing playing along with the time slipping nature of this, and we saw this back in episode 2. When Sylvie was opening the elevator doors, and then and then he got pruned and stuff, and you didn't know who it was. So it was like, again, really really cool stuff that's happening there overall. Yeah. Then we find we find that he time slipped actually to 1994. This is, I think, I don't know where in 1994 this is. So we started to see all the different characters in different timelines of
really,
yeah. Go ahead.
I watched this morning, but I don't remember who he saw first. If it was Obi.
It was Casey.
Obi was last. I think Obi was last. Casey was first. Yeah.
Casey was first. It was because they were in Alcatraz in 1962, and then he saw. I think he saw. He
saw B-15 for a little.
B-15 for a little bit. Yep.
And then he disappeared. So she was like helping out. She's a doctor, and she was helping out a child who broke her arm, and then she went out into the hall, and he was there for a second, and then he was gone.
Right. Right.
And I think he went up to Mobius as well and tried to talk to him, and then Mobius thought he was talking about ATVs instead of the TVA.
Yeah, exactly.
Then he disappeared, and then I think he went to Obi, and he actually didn't disappear with Obi. He actually had a whole conversation with him before he looked away. So,
which is, I think, this scene right here where he was having a conversation, and it's kind of like interesting where he kind of knows a little bit. I think his name here in this timeline is AD Doug, and so it's very interesting to kind of see this dynamic where he's like a professor at Caltech, and then he knows all these like quantum theories, but he's able to kind of work with Loki in some ways, like understand what's going on with him because of his background.
Aspiring science fiction author though. So
exactly.
He's not as rigid as a professor might be, because he's speculating about things. Although I guess he's a theoretical physicist who, and that's their job, to kind of speculate about things. But yeah, he doesn't really want to be a theoretical physicist. He wants to be a science fiction author.
Writer. And this scene, and then basically this scene was where he was trying to basically put his own books in the bookstore, and then and then the lady basically said, "Oh, there's no barcode for this." It's like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll pay." He's paying for his own books, so that's how desperate he is, unfortunately, with his science fiction career. So, but again, this has got a very interesting stuff. It kind of went over my head a little bit in terms of the quantum physics stuff that he was explaining, but in any case, it was still very interesting to kind of hear that Loki was kind of familiar, at least have some familiarity with AD Doug here. So it's really really cool in that case.
I will say that I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say I'm no expert in quantum physics, but I feel like a good portion of this conversation was just made up, because it's like what you're saying is not possible, and then they started talking about, oh well, if it's not possible and you still did it, then then it might be possible. So
exactly
he was talking science up to a point, and then he was like, I'm a science fiction writer, so we're going to talk about fiction now. The how is science, and then the why is the fiction part. So a lot of it was more narratively driven, and you're supposed to assume that he's using his science to actually make the temp pad and things like that, but not necessarily. The conversation is more about like the narrative and the emotional thrust of this episode.
Right, so and also before he time slipped, he was able to give him the TVA manual, and then basically he was explaining like, this could take me a lifetime to do, like with like coming from scratch could take me a lifetime to do, but then he was like, hey, here's the TVA manual, and we'll find out what happened to that later on later on in the episode. We also see Mobius, as Don, the jet ski seller, and he's kind of living in a very ho-hum type of life with 2 sons
in Ohio.
In Ohio.
This is after the blip, and he says that his wife is gone, and it's not clear whether or not his wife left him or his wife got blipped away.
Right, right,
So
right.
yeah,
I didn't even think of that. That's very interesting in that I it was very it's not uncommon to have yeah.
or she just died. That's
Right.
also the possibility.
Right. It's not uncommon to have single dads, but at the same time, and I think it kind of ticked me aback. It's like, oh, where's mom in that case, So, but yeah, very interesting to kind of see kind of how ordinary his life is, and with his two sons and things like that. So, and trying to kind of like balance fatherhood, single fatherhood with his jet ski business. Somewhat unsuccessful, I would say, in terms of selling stuff and things like that. And then having the dial, this is the first scene where, Loki came in and you were talking about the ATVs and things like that. But then we see him later on. I think this is where the emotional part kind of set in. It's like he didn't want to leave his sons, and he basically said that we were friends at a certain point in time, and so you can definitely see a little bit of brilliant acting from Owen Wilson in terms of in terms of emoting the humanity of Mobius here, Dawn here, trying to see
Hmm.
trying to empathize with Loki, Loki's plead for kind of like getting the band back together and things like that. So it's
Yeah.
definitely very important scene, and this speaks again to their chemistry together for these last two seasons. Go ahead.
There's also a lot of speculation about him having two sons, just like Odin had two sons, and one of them being
Mm,
more mischievous than the other. So yeah, I think they were trying to create a parallel there between Loki's life in his life, and he's the Odin in this situation, trying to be trying to stand behind between two rambunctious boys, and one, like I said, is a little bit more mischievous, burning things,
burning
burning
things.
things.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So
yeah.
and then
And one of
we
them also
yeah. Go ahead.
catch the one that didn't burn things. Asked for a snake, and that Thor loves the snakes, right?
Oh
So
yes,
he. Where Loki turned into a snake and bit him, and he likes that was in the Thor Ragnarok thing.
right,
So he turned into a snake and bit him, and because he knew he liked snakes. So yeah,
right.
so I think that's why they chose those characters to kind of parallel Thor and
Mm.
Loki.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely very interesting kind of point that you made there, and from online too. So this one
Hmm.
where we have Sylvie, he finally time slipped to the time in which Sylvie was at that McDonald's in 1982. He goes back there, and basically he's shocked. He's like, "Oh my gosh, you know who I am?" Because the other people, Casey,
Hmm.
Hunter B-15, Mobius does not know who he is. They're like, "Who are you?" And then Sylvie kind of shocked to see that Sylvie knows who he is and knows what's going
Yeah.
on, and so
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, in one sense, it doesn't make sense because he's the only one that can time slip. But I guess in another sense, it does, because it's not like he found her back in Asgard where she was taken, and then he had to like explain things to her. He found her at the McDonald's, which means that
Right.
a lot of everything that happened to her over the thousands of years still happened to her. Unlike these people who were put back where they were pulled from. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess it makes sense. It's not really explained. Maybe
Yeah.
because she's also an Asgardian. Maybe because she's not a human. She was
Right.
able to retain her memories. But yeah.
Yeah. So basically, he's kind of shocked that she knows what's going on, and they go out to the bar and for a drink, and so it kind of like this is kind of like a therapy session for Loki to kind of
Mhm.
dive into the root of the problem. What is the root of the problem, and so why is trying to kind of Sylvie's kind of probing Loki as to like what's going on with you? Why are you trying to get the band back together?
Mhm.
And it gets to a very very deep kind of rooted insecurity about himself about,
Yeah,
oh, I'm actually lonely.
he wants his friends,
I
and
mean
you
that's
gotta.
yeah.
It's funny because you think back to the first Thor movie where he showed up.
Hmm.
Thor's surrounded by friends. He has the Warriors, the Warriors
Three
Three or
words
something like
three.
that,
Yep.
and,
Hmm.
plus um, the Warriors 3, and I think it's Sif as well.
Sif is part of Warriors 3, isn't he?
I thought it was the big guy, Volstagg, and whatchamacallit is the Warriors.
Oh, yeah. So Sif and then the Warriors 3 because it's the Japanese the Japanese actor who played the other warrior. Yep.
Exactly. He was like the last of them to die. Sif is still out there, although she showed up in the last Thor movie.
Yep.
With her arm removed. But yeah, she so he had a bunch of friends, and Loki was just like kind of like the hanger on, and he was like playing tricks on them and everything, but he never had friends until this show, really. And
right,
he was always on the outs. So yeah, he wants his friends back. So it's interesting.
It's very interesting, kind of how she broke it down, and I was like, no, like it's very, very interesting how it's like, what's the root of the problem? What is your issue?
Yeah.
And it's like she's trying to keep probing. He's like, oh, I want to stop He Who Remains. No, that's not it. I want to stop this. No, it's not. I want to save the TV. No, it's not it. It's like, I want my friends. And it's like so raw.
Like I said, very emotional episode.
Yeah. So raw, and it's like this is what makes the MCU is like these kind of raw emotional moments that we kind of hold dear to, and we gravitate to, because and we've seen that in other ways throughout some of the Disney Plus shows, but not as much as we want them to be. I think that's where I think the MCU really shines, is this kind of emotion of the characters and the deep dive of them. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
So you can see here, you kind of the band gets back together. He kind of convinces them that this is a cause that's worthy for them to fight for, and so they decided to kind of like, they voluntarily jump back into this meeting all together. And so AD Doug was saying that, well, if we get them back together, then everyone's going to have a temporal aura. Yeah. And then they were able to kind of jump back to where they left off in the TVA, where we left off in episode 4. So that's kind of like them gathering together, is this type of thing.
Yeah.
This is where kind of Sylvie was kind of saying, nope, I'm really not going to go with this. This is not going to happen. I don't want to be a part of this. And so he's kind of like left to his own kind of like plan, and then he's kind of like also discouraged as well. He's like, maybe it's for the best not to even do anything, and go back to your timeline. Whereas, he sold them on something, and he's like, well, you should come.
It's like, never mind, yeah.
And then it's like, never mind, don't worry. And then Dawn's like, what the hell? It's like, what's gonna happen with my kids? So it's like.
Yeah.
That kind of wavering.
You said,
go ahead.
You said my kids are in danger. So yeah, if you said my kids are in danger.
Yeah. So it's like a total 360. It's total 180. So it's like, what do you want? What is it that you want, Loki? It's like, and then they kind of left in kind of like this very uncertain state, and so. But then what happens is Sylvie's kind of like already made her peace. She goes to a record store, makes her peace, and you see her listening to the record and listening to the song, and what happens is that her
branch timeline starts
to collapse. Yeah. It starts to collapse, and then she's just so nonchalant about it. She's like, "Oh, it's collapsing. I'm gonna open my door and then I'm gonna go back." It's like, and I just found it very. She mentioned the fact that we are both selfish in our own ways, and so this kind of like encapsulates it a lot right there. It's like,
I also, I mean, if you want to be harsh, it looks like she saw her McDonald's meal disappear. She saw when they were drinking one of the drinks disappear, and that didn't alarm her. So I guess she thought that it wouldn't be too big of a deal until the entire universe collapsed on itself. Just like, one or two things spaghettifying, that's fine. I'm not gonna worry about it. And then the entire universe collapse. So.
Yeah, that's how universe collapses. Like, oh, I'm gonna give up now, and I'm just gonna go back. Like, I could just conveniently just go back and forth anywhere I want, and it's like,
yeah, but everyone else is gone, basically.
Exactly. Exactly, which was kind of like, to me, I was like, what? Like, but it makes sense, she's selfish, so it's like, it makes total sense why she did that. And so they were able to find. So Sylvie then goes back to where the whole band was, and basically explains it. And then Loki was able to figure out that he was able to control this time slipping. That he was able to actually control it, and then he was able to time slip to back to where we were right before the end of episode 4. So
yeah, it's
yeah,
and he got there again, another emotional beat. He got there by focusing not on the why, because he got to the why when he spoke to Sylvie, and the why is that he wanted his friends back, but he specifically focused on who the them themselves, and then he was able to slip back and slip wherever he wanted to. He focused on the actual people. So yeah.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, it didn't, like, these things actually never happened, maybe it did happen, maybe it didn't happen, we don't even know. So it's like, that's the trouble with time travel, is that you don't know what's happening, you don't know if everything's up or down is up. And yeah, but still, it made enough sense, and there's enough emotional beats for this to work. There's a lot of things that could be very sloppy in terms of time traveling episodes or time traveling shows, but this made sense. So, I mean, we could forgive them for the fact that, hey, they kind of started back where they started in some ways.
They ended up where they started, and there might be a couple loops in the next episode as well. So, like, they may fail a couple times. This is why I was talking about at the beginning of the episode when I said you get a sense of where the last episode is going to go. Because this right here where he went back to is when Victor was going down the stairs to go outside. So he might not be able to convince them to stop right here. So he might have to go back a couple more minutes or whatever before he goes down these steps. So you might see a couple loops in the next episode. Right. Is what I suspect. As they try to fix this issue. As a matter of fact, if you look at the trailers, Victor doesn't disintegrate, and he goes all the way to the end. In one of those loops that's probably going to show up in the next episode. But there's another loop that showed up in the trailers where Loki is out there. So unless they shot that stuff just for the trailers, and Marvel sometimes does that just to throw people off, I think we're going to see a couple loops. One where Victor doesn't disintegrate as soon as he opens the door. One where Loki has to do it. So yeah, it should be interesting.
And we haven't seen Miss Minutes or Renslayer, and what type of plan, they've come up with, whether or not they're going to show up in the last episode, or whether or not they're going to, it's going to go into season 3, who knows? But they're kind of like
Dynasty or Deadpool, because the multiverse is going to be in that. So who knows? Yeah,
exactly. So that's kind of our thoughts on Loki season 2 episode 5. Any other final thoughts you have before we wrap up?
No, just looking forward to the season finale. I think it's been a really good season, like you said. I think people, the critics were a little bit too harsh. The people who got advanced ratings were a little bit too harsh. I don't think it's fallen off at all. I think this has been a really cool season, and I'm looking to see how they ended up. What will be the fate of the TVA? And will Loki and his friends basically be running the TVA after the end of the season? And how does this feed into Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars and Deadpool? And hopefully they don't scrap all this stuff and rehire the original Avengers, which just came up on a variety thing. That's just the stupidest idea. It's like, why invest? You're basically telling people that we can't trust you. We invest all our time and energy into the new characters that you've recently built up. Some people have mixed reviews or thoughts about that, but Iron Man was a B-list character. You can do the same thing with all the new people. You don't have to rehire the actors from before. So
I think
just keep going. Minor course, like scrap everything. So
correct. Well, that's kind of our thoughts. So go ahead.
Go. I was just saying, just looking forward. We'll see.
Okay, so that's our thoughts on everything in MCU related. But what do you have to think about Loki season 2, episode 5, and MCU thoughts? So please comment, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and we will see you in the next one. All right, thank you. Bye.